Soft lives build weak wills. This truth cuts through the comfortable delusions of modern existence like a blade through silk, revealing the harsh reality that comfort, the very thing we spend our lives pursuing, is the silent destroyer of everything we claim to value: strength, resilience, purpose, and authentic power. I have observed the casualties of comfort in every corner of society. People whose lives have been so cushioned from difficulty that they lack the basic capacity to handle inevitable challenges, whose wills have atrophied from disuse, whose spirits have grown soft from constant accommodation. They mistake ease for success, convenience for progress, and the absence of struggle for the presence of wisdom. In a world that promises happiness through the elimination of discomfort, I bring you the ancient truth that has been forgotten. Discomfort is not your enemy, but your greatest teacher. Not a curse to be avoided, but a gift to be embraced. Every moment of ease you choose over effort is a moment of potential strength you sacrifice on the altar of temporary pleasure. Today I speak of why the soft path leads to weakness, why the hard path builds character, and why learning to love discomfort is the secret to developing the kind of unbreakable will that shapes reality, rather than being shaped by it. The modern world has perfected the art of comfort creation, building elaborate systems designed to eliminate every possible source of discomfort from human experience. We have climate control to ensure perfect temperature, instant entertainment to avoid boredom, processed foods to eliminate the effort of cooking, and countless conveniences that promise to make life easier and more pleasant. But observe what happens to those who live entirely within these comfortable bubbles. Their capacity for handling even minor inconveniences diminishes rapidly. A delayed flight becomes a crisis. A Wi-Fi outage feels catastrophic. A moment of boredom triggers anxiety. They have trained themselves to expect constant comfort and become increasingly fragile when reality fails to provide it. This fragility is not accidental. It is the inevitable result of choosing ease over effort, repeatedly until the very muscles of resilience waste away from disuse. Just as physical muscles atrophy when not challenged with resistance, the psychological and spiritual muscles that enable us to handle difficulty weaken when we consistently choose the path of least resistance. The soft life movement perfectly exemplifies this dangerous trajectory. It promises a life without struggle, without effort, without the discomfort that has traditionally been understood as necessary for growth and character development. It sells the fantasy that you can have strength without lifting weights, wisdom without facing challenges, and fulfillment without ever being uncomfortable. But this promise is a lie that leads to a particularly modern form of suffering, the suffering of those who are unprepared for the inevitable difficulties that no amount of comfort-seeking can permanently avoid. When protected individuals finally encounter real adversity, they lack the internal resources to handle it, leading to breakdowns that could have been prevented through gradual exposure to manageable discomfort. The psychological research confirms what wisdom traditions have always known. Willpower operates like a muscle that must be exercised to maintain its strength. When we consistently choose comfort over challenge, we literally diminish our capacity for self-control, delayed gratification, and perseverance in the face of difficulty. Discomfort is nature's gymnasium for the human will, providing the resistance necessary for psychological strength to develop. Just as physical muscles require progressive overload to grow stronger, the capacity for mental toughness, emotional resilience, and spiritual fortitude can only be developed through exposure to increasingly challenging circumstances. Physical discomfort, exercise that pushes your limits, exposure to heat and cold, voluntary hunger, physical challenges that test endurance, trains your body to function effectively under stress, while simultaneously building mental discipline. When you learn to push through physical discomfort, you develop the neural pathways that enable perseverance in other areas of life. Mental discomfort, tackling difficult intellectual challenges, sitting with uncertainty, facing your fears, engaging with ideas that threaten your existing beliefs, expands your cognitive capacity and emotional range. The mind, like the body, grows strongest when regularly challenged beyond its current comfort zone, developing new capacities through the process of adaptation to difficulty. Spiritual discomfort, confronting questions of meaning and purpose, facing your own mortality, grappling with moral complexity, sitting with existential uncertainty, forces the development of inner resources that cannot be cultivated any other way. These challenges to your fundamental assumptions about reality create the pressure necessary for authentic spiritual growth. The integration of these three forms of discomfort creates what might be called integrated resilience, a wholeness of being that can handle whatever life presents without fragmenting or breaking down. This resilience cannot be purchased, inherited, or borrowed. It can only be earned through the conscious choice to face difficulty, rather than flee from it. Modern convenience culture systematically eliminates these natural opportunities for will building, creating environments where people can live for years without ever having their comforts seriously challenged. This elimination of natural resistance creates a generation of psychologically weak individuals who mistake their weakness for sensitivity and their inability to handle difficulty for emotional sophistication. Discomfort is the forge in which human virtues are shaped and hardened into useful tools for living. Every quality we admire in others, courage, persistence, compassion, wisdom, integrity, has been developed through the conscious choice to face difficulty rather than avoid it. These virtues cannot be taught through comfort. They must be earned through trial. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite fear. And this willingness can only be developed through repeated exposure to frightening situations. Each time you choose to face what scares you, rather than retreat to safety, you build the neural pathways that make courage more accessible in future challenges. Those who avoid all discomfort never develop these pathways and remain eternally fearful. Patience emerges from the crucible of waiting, of wanting something and not being able to have it immediately, of learning to maintain equanimity in the face of delay or frustration. In a world of instant gratification, patience becomes a rare and valuable quality that can only be cultivated through the deliberate choice to delay satisfaction and tolerate the discomfort that delay creates. Humility develops through failure, through the humbling experience of discovering your limitations, through the discomfort of being wrong or inadequate in situations that matter to you. Those who are protected from failure never develop genuine humility, instead maintaining the arrogance that comes from never having their illusions of competence seriously challenged. Empathy deepens through personal suffering, through the experience of pain that allows you to recognize and connect with the pain of others. Those who have never suffered meaningfully often display a superficial compassion that evaporates when real sacrifice is required, because they lack the foundation of personal experience that makes empathy authentic rather than merely performative. Wisdom emerges from the integration of difficult experiences, from learning to extract meaning and guidance from circumstances that initially appeared purely negative. This wisdom cannot be gained through study alone, but requires the lived experience of navigating challenges and discovering what works and what doesn't through trial and error. One of discomfort's most valuable gifts is its capacity to cut through illusions and reveal reality in its unvarnished form. Comfortable lives often function as elaborate systems of self-deception, allowing people to maintain pleasant fantasies about themselves and their world that would quickly crumble if subjected to the testing that difficulty provides. Easy times obscure fundamental truths about existence, the reality of impermanence, the inevitability of loss, the presence of suffering, the necessity of effort for meaningful achievement. People living in comfort bubbles often develop unrealistic expectations about what life owes them and how reality should accommodate their preferences, setting themselves up for devastating disappointment when these expectations inevitably collide with actual circumstances. Discomfort serves as a reality check that forces alignment between your beliefs about how things should work and how they actually work. When your comfortable assumptions are challenged by difficult experiences, you must either adapt your understanding to match reality or suffer the consequences of maintaining illusions that no longer serve you. The process of facing discomfort also reveals internal resources and capabilities you never knew you possessed. Most people dramatically underestimate their capacity for handling difficulty because they have never been forced to discover these reserves of strength. When comfortable options are removed, and you must either rise to the challenge or fail, you often surprise yourself with what becomes possible. This revelation of hidden capacity is one of discomfort's greatest gifts, the discovery that you are stronger, more resilient, and more capable than your comfortable life allowed you to realize. This knowledge becomes a foundation of confidence that cannot be shaken by future challenges, because it is based on proven performance under pressure, rather than untested assumptions about your abilities. Discomfort also reveals the difference between what you think you need and what you actually need, between genuine necessities and manufactured desires. When forced to operate with less comfort, less convenience, and fewer options, you discover how much of what you thought was essential was actually just habitual indulgence. This clarity about true needs versus imagined needs becomes invaluable for making wise decisions about how to allocate your time, energy, and resources. Learning to embrace discomfort as a gift rather than resist it as an enemy requires developing new mental frameworks and practical approaches that run counter to most cultural conditioning. This transformation begins with understanding that your relationship with discomfort largely determines your capacity for growth, achievement, and authentic satisfaction. The first step is reframing discomfort from problem to opportunity, from something to be avoided to something to be welcomed as a sign that you are pushing beyond your current limitations. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid this difficulty?" the question becomes, "What can I learn from this challenge?" This shift in perspective transforms every uncomfortable situation into a chance for development, rather than merely something to endure. Physical practices provide an excellent foundation for this reframing, because the connection between effort and improvement is most obvious in the body. Regular exercise that pushes your limits, cold exposure, fasting, or other forms of voluntary physical challenge create direct experience of how temporary discomfort leads to lasting strength. This physical foundation makes it easier to apply the same principles to mental and emotional challenges. Mental training involves deliberately seeking intellectual challenges that stretch your cognitive abilities, sitting with uncertainty rather than rushing to premature conclusions, and engaging with ideas that threaten your existing beliefs rather than only consuming information that confirms what you already think. This mental discomfort seeking builds the intellectual courage necessary for genuine learning and growth. Emotional training requires facing fears rather than avoiding them, having difficult conversations rather than maintaining comfortable silence, and processing painful emotions rather than numbing them with distractions. Each choice to feel discomfort rather than flee from it builds emotional resilience and expands your capacity for authentic relationship with yourself and others. The practice also involves gratitude for difficulty, learning to appreciate challenges as gifts rather than burdens, recognizing that every obstacle is an opportunity to develop qualities you couldn't cultivate any other way. This gratitude transforms your entire relationship with adversity, from victimization to empowerment, from something that happens to you to something you can use for your development. The path I walked demanded that I embrace discomfort, not as an occasional necessity, but as a constant companion in the pursuit of objectives that could not be achieved through comfort alone. In accepting this relationship with difficulty, I discovered that what most people call suffering is actually the raw material of strength, the fuel of transformation, and the price of authentic power. I learned that every moment of discomfort contains within it the seed of greater capacity. Every challenge carries the potential for breakthrough, and every form of pain holds the possibility of profound growth. But only for those who choose to engage with difficulty consciously, rather than merely endure it passively. Your modern world has created unprecedented opportunities to avoid discomfort, to live in climate-controlled environments, to have immediate access to entertainment and distraction, to eliminate most forms of physical and psychological challenge from daily experience. While these conveniences provide obvious benefits, they also create hidden costs in the form of diminished resilience, weakened will, and reduced capacity for handling the inevitable difficulties that no amount of comfort-seeking can permanently prevent. The soft life movement perfectly captures this dangerous trend. The belief that happiness comes from minimizing effort, that fulfillment emerges from maximizing comfort, that the goal of human development is to create lives free from all forms of difficulty or challenge. But this philosophy produces people who are exquisitely sensitive to minor discomforts while being completely unprepared for major challenges. The alternative is what I call voluntary hardship, the deliberate choice to seek challenges, embrace difficulty, and use discomfort as a tool for development, rather than something to be avoided. This approach recognizes that strength can only be built through resistance, that resilience emerges from recovery, and that the capacity for great achievement requires the willingness to accept great discomfort in service of meaningful goals. Remember that every person you admire for their strength, wisdom, or achievement developed these qualities through their relationship with difficulty, not through avoiding it. Every breakthrough in human development, every advance in capability, every expansion of possibility has required someone's willingness to push beyond comfort into the territory where growth becomes possible. Your will is not a fixed trait, but a capacity that grows stronger or weaker based on how you use it. Every time you choose the harder path, when an easier one is available, you strengthen this capacity. Every time you push through discomfort, rather than retreat to comfort, you build psychological muscle that serves you in all future challenges. The gift of discomfort is not immediately obvious because its benefits often emerge over time horizons that exceed our natural patience. The strength you build today through embracing difficulty may not be needed until months or years later, when life presents challenges that would overwhelm someone who had chosen the soft path, but become manageable for someone who had prepared through voluntary hardship. Begin where you are, with what you have. Find small ways to choose discomfort over comfort. Take cold showers. Exercise until you're genuinely tired. Sit with difficult emotions instead of distracting yourself. Tackle intellectual challenges that stretch your mind. Have conversations that require courage. Each choice builds capacity for larger challenges. Most importantly, learn to see discomfort as your ally, rather than your enemy, as a teacher, rather than a tormentor, as a gift rather than a burden. In this reframing lies the key to transformation. The understanding that everything you want to become requires your willingness to be uncomfortable in service of that becoming. Soft lives build weak wills, but those who embrace discomfort forge themselves into instruments capable of shaping reality rather than merely responding to it. The choice is always yours: comfort now and weakness later, or discomfort now and strength forever. Choose strength. Choose growth. Choose the path that transforms temporary discomfort into permanent capacity. Your future self will thank you for the gifts you give through every moment of difficulty you choose to embrace rather than avoid. The forge awaits. Step into the fire and discover what you become when comfort is no longer your master, but discomfort becomes your teacher.